Alright guys, we're going to do a how-to video for detail stripping the Glock. I'm probably going to get some of the parts wrong, the names wrong anyway, and interchange them, but I'll annotate that in the video when I do so. Alright, first thing we're going to do is just field strip it. So you inspect the chamber, look in there, verify it's empty, point in a safe direction, pull the trigger. You're going to pull down here on the tabs, both sides of the pistol, release. We'll set the frame off to the side here first. And take out your spring, your barrel, set those off to the side. That's your field strip pistol. What we're going to do here is, if you look up in here, we have the spacer sleeve, a little plastic piece right here. You're going to push the firing pin back a little bit like I just did, so that way you can work it. You're going to push down towards the end of the barrel, or towards the firing end of the gun on the sleeve, and push out with your thumb on the slide plate cover. Set that off to the side. You're going to pull it out. We have our firing pin, spring, and spring cups, which we'll get to that in a second. Set that off to the side. Next, we're going to pull out the extractor, depressor, plunger, I believe, and spring, and spring-loaded bearing. Set those off to the side. You can pull those apart if you want to. They assemble, go right back together just the way you see it right there. And to get the extractor out, what you got to do is you just push here on the firing pin safety, and it should fall right out. This is a kind of gunked up pistol here, so it might not, but it did. I'm going to set that off to the side, and we will pull, or it should actually fall out, but this gun, like I said, is as dirty as can be. Pull the firing pin safety out. Now your slide is completely detail stripped. Alright, to put it back together, you just go in the exact opposite order I did, but you know what, I skipped something. Let's get to the firing pin here. The way to pull this apart, should you ever need to, there's a handy way to do it, is just to use the slide there as a tool. And you're going to set it right there, so that way the firing pin here is getting caught on it. You're going to pull down with both hands on the spring and pull the spring cups out. Be very careful with those, they do like to fly around. You can see there's two of them there. Take your spring off, which we have here, and our firing pin, and our firing pin sleeve. And that is the actual completely detail strip slide this time. You can take the sleeve out of there if you want. I recommend not doing it. Reason for that is, excuse me, the channel liner. You can take the channel liner out there if you want. I recommend not doing it, because if you do, you have to basically put a new one in if you do that. So there's really not many reasons why you'd want to do that. To put it back together, you put it back on the slide just like we did before. We're going to pull down and insert these spring cups. And like I said, guys, be careful. These things like to fly across the room. If you do this frequently, you might want to just get an extra set, because they're cheap and they do like to fly, like I just said. You got to line them both up and back on there. There you go. Set that off to the side. And we're gonna go ahead and put it back together here. Take our extractor, there's only one way it can go in. Put it the way it goes. Hold it in there with your finger in the slide. Take our firing pin safety, you're gonna push that back up in there and just push down on it. You can hear it catch, and there you go. It's holding that extractor in place. Next up, we'll take the this extractor, depressor, plunger, put it back in. The metal goes on metal, so the metal's going to be touching the extractor here. Put that back in the slide where it goes. And next up will be the firing pin assembly. Put that back in. And now we're going to put the rear plate cover back on. Some of you guys like to change these out with fancy ones, aftermarket ones. That's fine if you want to do that. But what you're going to do here is you're going to push down on the firing pin assembly first, and then the extractor, depressor, plunger, or the spring-loaded bearing, because that's what's actually showing. So push down while pushing up. You can actually get it. And there you go. And now we're going to do the spring-loaded bearing. And that's your slide put back together. Next up will be the frame. This is called the number 1 pin right here. Reason being, it always comes out first. So just to zoom in there and show you, this one right here is the number 1 pin. So what you're going to do is we're going to push it out. As if you were shooting the gun, it'd be going left to right. If you're going to do it, make sure you use a Glock tool or an appropriate size punch. If you're going to use a punch, make sure it's not tapered, so that way you don't damage the frame. But all we're going to do is just push it out. Sometimes they like to stick a little bit. That one went out. This one is a metal spring, just make note of that. It's an all steel string. That's pin, excuse me, pin. And to take this pin out, we're gonna have to pull the slide lock lever, excuse me, slide stop lever slightly forward and push this out at the same time. And you kind of wiggle it and it should come right out. That's it, I've never pulled this one out and it came out. This is also a metal pin. Another thing to make note of, it's a little bigger than the first one that we pulled out. And now the slide stop lever will come right out. Set that off to the side. Now we're going to take out the rear pin here, the trigger pin, and you just push it straight out. Of note, this pin is polymer, so it differentiates itself from the other two. And right here we're going to take out the locking block. The way to do that is just get up under there with your punch or your Glock tool and pry it right up, just like I'm about to do. So you go there, pull it up, pops right out. And now your whole trigger assembly will come right out of your pistol, just like that, just pulling up on it. Now we're going to set this off to the side real quick. And in order to take this apart, what you're going to do is you're going to push this way on the trigger with trigger bar. So you just push it, comes right out. As you just saw there, the cruciform has to clear the plastic housing here. You can see the way the spring is there. Just lift it off and it'll come right out of that hook. This is completely disassembled. The trigger with trigger bar doesn't go down any further than that. Now we're going to take the connector here. As you can see there, the connector comes right through the back. We're going to push through and pop that right out. And that's it. That's your trigger housing taken apart. You can take the spring off too if you'd like, if you need to replace that. We're going to leave it on there just for video purposes. And now the slide lock here, which is this piece right here. Go ahead and pop that out. As you can see up in there is the spring. Where is it? There you go. Right there. A little piece of metal that shows up on your screen. You're just going to push that down and have it fall right out. Should anyway. Just wiggle it. And there you go. And that's it. If you do need to take the mag catch out, there's a spring inside here that you just push to the left or right depending on your pistol and it falls out. That said, I'm not going to do it because on camera it's very hard to get the angle right. Anyway, we're going to put it back together. And how we do that here is with our slide slide lock. You always want to make sure the little ridge, which we'll zoom in there, see that little ridge on there, is facing towards the shooter. You can put it in either side and just kind of start it out a little bit. Push the spring down, just depress it, and while we push it back through. And the thing you want to notice is just pull down on it, and that way you know it's installed correct, as long as the ridge, like I said, is facing the shooter as if you were shooting the gun. Set that off to the side for a second. Here we have the trigger housing, the ejector housing, excuse me, and the trigger bar. Set that down. First thing we're going to put in there is the connector. So we're going to push it in just the way we pulled, the opposite way we pulled it out, and you have it there. Push it in until it's all the way in. You don't need to really push on it. It sits in there nice and flush. Now you can see here on the rear of that cruciform we have a little circle. We're going to line that up with the spring and get it hooked in there. And to get it back to where it's supposed to be, just pull up so that way the spring goes over the plastic part of the housing. Then you're just going to twist back the opposite way that we did to take it off. And that's, set that off to the side, it's good to go. It's ready to be back installed. Alright, we're going to take our locking block, pop it back in. The two long pieces of metal go towards the front of the gun. Alright. You know what, I did that backwards. Take that back. Take the locking block out. I'm going to put the trigger with trigger bar on the trigger housing in there. You just set it right down in there, making sure it all stays together the way you put it back together. Now we're going to take the locking block, put that back in there the way I just described, and the number 1 pin again. This is the metal piece with the smaller of the metal pins. Again, number 1 pin, it's the first pin to go in. So we're going to go on the opposite side, put that pin in there, just push it through, take your Glock tool or whatever punch you have, push it through. If you use the corner of a Glock tool, it makes it real simple because basically you just push the corner in as far as it'll go and it's about even halfway through. Mix it. There you go. And Next up, we're going to take the slide stop lever. You want to make sure, I'll zoom in on it there for you. You want to make sure you get this spring on the lever underneath that number 1 pin as it goes in there. So you push it in. You can see how that sits. There's a little slot here on the far left, and that's where you want to get it, underneath that number 1 pin. The big problem people have when they disassemble these pistols and put them back together is they don't put it underneath there, and then the slide's locking back after every shot. If that happens, that's what you did wrong. Alright, and now we're going to take the wider and the larger of the 2 metal pins, push it back through in the opposite direction we took it out. Now, just like you had to put some forward pressure on it to get it out, you might have to do the same to get it back in. It just depends. All the guns are different. It just depends on how it lines up. That one went in there fairly easily. And again, you use the corner of the Glock tool, get it spaced out there so it's even halfway through. Take our trigger housing pin, and we're going to push that one right through the opposite direction again. That again is the plastic pin, or the polymer pin, I guess as Glock would call it. And we're going to do the same. Just push it halfway through so that way it's even. And that's our frame, reassembled. And take the slide, barrel, put it back together. Take your recoil spring and guide rod, put it back in there as you found it. Set it on the rails, rack the pistol, and you've just detail stripped and reassembled your Glock pistol. As always, guys, if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. Alright, thanks.